chasing the rabbit so you don't have to. Here they are, Mark and Don, the two crazy guys.
Hey, and welcome to another broadcast episode of The Two Crazy Guys, broadcasting from undisclosed locations here in Southeast Arizona. My name is Donald Lowry, a.k.a. Big D, and on the other side I have my buddy and cohort and partner in crime, the other crazy guy. His name is Mark Boyle, a.k.a. the Prepper Guy. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing really good today. I mean, been watching the news and getting frustrated, but all in all, it's been pretty good. I mean, it's hard not to get discouraged.
That if you're not upset, it's because you're not paying attention to what's going on.
Yes. I mean, that is so true, because you look around and, you know, we've talked about this numerous times. You got the Green Deal or the Green New Deal or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah.
I noticed today that there's 16 states now that are trying to push for popular vote. So they're gonna make it to where, depending on popular vote, then the electoral votes go to that. And it's just,
we've got to be very careful with that. That's, you know, that whole thing. Look, our entire genius in our Republican form of government is the Electoral College. Period. Yeah. And if we go to that popular vote, we might as well hang it up. We'll never see another candidate other than what those who live in California and New York want to see based on population alone.
Right. And you know, at first blush, everybody thinks, well, we're a democracy and one man, one vote or whatever. Yeah, no. And it could sound kind of good if you were, you know, really not paying attention.
Yeah.
But when you think about the beauty of the Electoral College, which most people have never done, is actually study it, you see how well it works, and it's like, it's better than popular vote.
Yeah.
But you know, it's hard to educate the masses when our voice and John's voice and everybody, even, you know, all the way up to Levin and these bigger, you know, radio shows, we're still only a few parts per million.
Yeah.
So it's too hard to figure it out. But I was reading that this morning thinking, we are in such bad shape as a nation.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's almost discouraging in a point to where you just want to throw up your hands and walk away.
You know, Mark, that you are spot on. Look, first of all, you said it looks good on paper. Well, the Green New Deal looks good on paper. But if you were to try to put that and implement it into plan, it's not sustainable. None of it is. But no. You are saying the exact same things that I in my heart felt a few years ago, you know, when I was originally doing the Conservative Underground podcast. I was actually in the mindset that I was the lone wolf. I was the only one that thought the way I did. You know, I thought that we were doomed. I thought that we were losing the republic. And, you know, then I met some other friends here locally and, you know, started getting involved politically. And I started to see that indeed I was wrong. And then, of course, Trump got elected. And I see, you know, you see the people that support him. And it makes me have a resounding glee that the republic is not lost, but we are well on our way to losing it if we don't, you know, John Jeffers of the Jeffers Brief, and he's, by the way, welcome to all the listeners on KYAH 540 AM and all the other areas where you're going to be listening to this in iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher Radio and all those other places. Welcome to all the listeners, because without you, we have no show. But, you know, and also we want to remind you to log on to www.getthet.com and go check them out as well. But, you know, the whole thing is it's scary because we are on a path to losing the republic, because every day America is bombarded with the democracy, the democracy, the democracy. This isn't how our democracy works, and we need to work on saving the democracy. You know, it's part of dumbing down America. If you tell somebody something enough, they begin to believe it.
They start thinking it's true. Yeah. And I was talking to one of the folks. I guess I'll leave his name out a little bit, but from the Patriot Alliance, and he was saying, well, I don't remember 9/11. He was younger then, and you're thinking, they don't have a history to look back on, and so when you start jumping into socialism, you really got to go back, even before you and I were born, almost when, World War I and II, and so it's easy to, I guess, pull the wool over people's eyes when they don't have a historic reference, and they're not going to get the facts from the media.
No.
So when AOC or somebody, Bernie Sanders comes along and says, "Man, this socialism is going to be great,"
yeah,
they can't really, do the thinking about it and go, well, I don't know. History shows us that it never worked, because they don't have that top of mind awareness of just how bad it was. Just like 9/11, we've all forgotten 9/11 other than a date, of what happened. And I was right there watching it on the news live as it happened. So it's in my mind, of what that was that day. But younger, people, they can't feel those gut emotions that, when it's talked about, a 9/11, they just go, oh yeah, my parents talked about it, but they don't have that visceral reaction to go, no, this is just messed up.
Right.
And it's the same with socialism, democracy, popular vote. They just have no frame of reference, I guess, is the short way of saying it.
Well, we are moving into an election cycle, and we have the 2020 election coming up. And, none of the candidates on the Democratic side are hiding the fact that they're socialists. In fact, at one time, they would try to hide it, and they would try to act like, like you were saying the last time, Barack Obama sounded so much like a conservative, and then they always run to the other side. Well, they're not even trying to hide the fact that they're socialists now.
No, they come out and, like Bernie Sanders just says it. They call it democratic socialist, which I guess is really not an oxymoron, because, a democracy is, a really big step towards socialism.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing.
And identity politics and all that. It's creating a push for mob rule. So, but they say it. Bernie Sanders, I'm a democratic socialist. Like, oh, that just sounds so warm and fuzzy, Grandpa.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? It means the death of America.
You tell them, well, socialism has never worked anywhere that it's ever been tried. And their answer is, well, that's because they didn't know how to do it. We know how to do it, so it's going to work for us.
Yeah, like Karl Marx didn't know what he was doing when he figured it all out in the first place.
Exactly.
He didn't know what he was doing, and he invented it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay.
But they seem to think that they know how to do it. And then you start looking at this Green New Deal, and you're like, man, this is just absolutely ludicrous.
Well, and I agree with you, even though the first time you talked to me about it, I thought it'll never happen. But I never thought that you would have politicians that have sworn an oath to a constitution to start talking about undermining the biggest cornerstone of our freedom and liberty, which is, the Electoral College and the way we elect a president.
Yeah.
And so I never thought I'd see that day either. And here it is right around the corner.
Well, here's the thing. People tell me, and I've discussed this, and they say, well, they'll never get it through. They can never get it through. It'll never happen. But listen, it's really not that hard. No. Here's all they have to do. All they have to do is they have to get one of these candidates elected. Every one of them support the Green New Deal. They've all come out and said that they support it. So that's all they have to do is get one of them elected. And then all they have to do is start rigging the elections, just like they always do, and taking up more seats in the House and more seats in the Senate until they have both the House, the Senate, and the president. And guess what? They run the bill in the House. It passes the House. It passes the Senate, and it's signed into law.
Right. And if you look at these 16 states that are literally talking about, throwing their electoral votes to the popular vote.
Right.
It doesn't take an act of Congress to make that happen. That's kind of has always been up to the states to,
Right.
figure out the rules of who's the electors and everything. So it doesn't even take a big push.
Nope.
You've already got 18 states saying we're going to do this, and I guess they have every right to do it.
Now, the other thing is, the other argument that I've come across is, well, they need to ratify it and they need, 2/3 and all this, that, and the other. They're talking about the Constitution. They're talking about ratifying a change to our Constitution.
Right.
What I'm talking about and what they're talking about is flushing the Constitution down the toilet and implementing the Green New Deal as the new law. There's a
Right.
difference there. If you want to change our United States Constitution, then yes, you need 2/3 of the vote. But we're not talking about changing our Constitution.
No.
We're talking about replacing the Constitution
Yeah.
with a new Bill of Rights and a new law.
Right. So it basically, why would you get 2/3 of the states to agree with it when you're going to do away with that silly old document anyway?
Exactly. That's my point.
And so they're kind of circumventing the checks and balances with these things. And we're all way too busy to keep up on all this stuff anymore.
Yeah, nobody's paying attention and nobody cares.
No, I mean, I would say that if you really had a chat with most people, Democrats and Republicans, they would go, well, we don't want that.
Right.
But you're not having that debate, as they call it. We're just getting brainwashed from the media.
Yep.
Of how all this stuff's supposed to happen. And so it scares me on a different level to where, I'll be 65 this summer, and I'm thinking I might see this collapse as far as, what's going on in Venezuela and stuff.
Yeah.
In my lifetime, and there ain't much of it left. And it pisses me off kind of, because if there's going to be a revolution, I'd kind of like to be, healthy enough to run or fight or hold up my rifle, So,
Yeah, I hear you, man.
But I'm seeing it, and I was wondering, and maybe here after break, it's like I was gonna bring it up in the Patriot Alliance. How do you fix this? I mean, we can all talk until we're blue in the face, but
Yeah.
how is there a way to actually create a plan and make it happen?
Yes,
Because otherwise it's just talk.
there is a way to do it, but it's
Yeah.
going to take cooperation and it's going to take work. And you can't sit in your chair and be an armchair quarterback. Like John Jeffers, was it John that said, or was it you? Maybe it was you that said, I think it was you. Are you willing to fight?
Yeah.
We're all willing to fight, but how far are you willing to go to fight?
Right. And what will be your position? That was my thing with not will you stand, but where will you stand?
Exactly.
Because I've talked to really good patriots that have no clue sometimes, and they're good intentions and all that, but they look at it differently. And so the hill they're going to die on is completely diametrically opposed to the hill I'm planning on dying on.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get this fractured mess. Why don't we take a break, and then we'll come back and see if we can solve all the world's problems in the next 45 minutes.
All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
All righty.
Contra Radio Network. All of your favorite shows. The Jeffers Brief. Prepping 2.0. The Two Crazy Guys. And the Conservative Underground. Listen to them all on the Contra Radio Network. www.contraradionetwork.com. Let's talk about tea. Not just any tea, getthetea.com. They have all kinds of cool stuff. They have cleansing teas, they have stuff for eye health, stuff from the sea, immune support, stamina and energy, food and protein, and just all kinds of cool stuff. Log on to the website at www.getthetea.com. Log on now.
Talking the issues and taking the hit. Here they are, the two crazy guys.
Alrighty, and welcome back from the break. And we would again like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. Mark and I have been talking about, the stuff that's going on in our country. They're about to. If you're not paying it, if you're not upset, it's because you're not paying attention. You were about ready to get snowballed, and we're here talking. And I hope you're listening because we're trying to wake you up to the reality of what's going down in this country.
Yeah, and maybe I can try to preface the question that eats at me all the time is, we all talk about solutions and we can fix it, we can stand, we can fight, we can save our nation, but that's all really cute when you're just chit-chatting, but
yeah,
how do you make a concrete plan? It's the difference between planning a vacation 5 years from now and actually getting in your car and going somewhere.
Exactly. And
we're at that point, in my opinion, that if we continue to just stand back and worry about it, then it's going to be too late. So you were discussing some pretty good ideas, and there's just got to be an option that won't get you arrested and still put up a good fight.
Well, see, okay, so the First Amendment to the Constitution gives you the right to peaceably protest your government. But they've twisted that.
Right.
They've twisted that to mean that they can go out in the street and they can block traffic and they can bust up stuff that doesn't belong to them, and they can, hold these signs and they can be, as violent as they want. And they're wrong. That's not what that's about.
No.
We need to start learning how the first thing you need to do, and I've said this and I'm going to say it again, is you have to become educated. Right. You cannot fight this battle unless you know what you're up against.
You have to know thy enemy. I mean, it goes back to the art of war, and it might sound cliche, but they are the enemy.
You have to know what you're up against, number one. Number two, you have to know the system of government and how it functions in order to be able to stay within the confines of the law and legally fight the law and know how to beat the system without being taken to jail by beating the system. So you have to know, okay, the Constitution is the law of the land. You have to know this document. I'm not telling you to go out and memorize the darn thing. I am not a constitutional expert, but I do take Constitution classes. I refer to the Constitution a lot. I carry the Constitution with me everywhere I go so that if I have a doubt or a question, I can pull out my little pocket Constitution and reference it. Okay. Right. And that's what I'm talking about. When I was running for council, I handed out, if not hundreds, thousands of these constitutions to people because my whole thing is you have to get educated. Read the stupid thing. Right. Put down, stop watching, video games or whatever for 20 minutes a day and read the Constitution.
Just like people do with their Bible. And that's a big book. And I'm not mocking faith and all that, but if you're going to be religious and you're going to sit down and read to the family or to yourself 1 or 2 hours a day or once a week, just spend, your afternoon Sunday reading it. What's so hard about the Constitution?
Right. I mean, and you have to, so that's the next step is, okay, first you have to educate yourself. You have to understand the form of government that we have. You have to understand a republic. You have to understand what a republic is. If you think about it, word republic, literally, if you literally defines into rule by balance. Okay.
Right.
A republic means rule by balance, a system of balances. And you have to understand that. You can't go into this fight thinking like you're being taught that we're in a democracy and all this other stuff, because they're brainwashing you and they're teaching you the stuff that they want you to learn. Right. Go to get yourself a constitution, start reading it, understand, learn how the system of government works. Learn that we have, 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislative, the judicial branches of government. Right. Learn that, they are 3 separate branches with equal authority.
Right.
But yet they can't supersede, they cannot impose on the other. In other words, the judicial branch of the government is to interpret the law, not to write it.
Right.
Mommy and daddy's job over in the Congress, the House and the Senate.
Well, let me play devil's advocate, because a lot of people will always say, well, the Constitution is so complicated, and it's not.
No, it's not.
But after 200 years of, case law and precedents and stare decisis and all that, I've had people pretty smart in the Constitution, and I think even like Mark Levin said, well, a state cannot secede from the Union or secede from the Union. Well, maybe with all the dust and decay we've put on the Constitution, you could make a case against that. But the reality is, when it was written, it was not written as a suicide pact. Mm-hmm. And so you might destroy your state in doing so, because then we talked about that last week, that you've basically shredded your enabling document. So it's kind of like getting a divorce. You're no longer married.
That's right.
And so you don't have the last name, you don't have the house, everything's separated again. But when you really look at the Constitution and go, free speech meant what? It meant just 2 or 3 things. You can't look back at all of the case laws and the BS and go, oh, well, now I'm confused. Just remember, you legally have all the rights, and you have the right to free speech. You have the right to bear arms. You don't need to take a training course. It might be a good idea, but you don't have to.
Right. That's exactly right.
And so they've muddied the water, so it's so damn hard to actually study the Constitution. It's like reading Dick and Jane with 200 years of what that meant. And was his name really Dick, or was it Richard?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, it's Dick and Jane.
Right.
So that's, to me, I think whether it's a conspiracy or not, they have muddied the water, and it makes it hard for the average person to study the Constitution.
I agree. That's why you find a good class and you get enrolled.
Okay, so without firing a shot or getting, deemed as a terrorist organization, and we've seen that around here with the Minutemen and all that, eventually just so much BS pressure comes to bear.
Yeah, I remember George Bush called them vigilantes.
Yeah, so how do you, because if you don't move laterally or one way or the other, if you lock up, then nothing's going to get done. So how do we?
This is how we do it.
How do we do it?
This is it. All right. Pay attention, because I'm going to put it real quick in a nutshell.
I'm all ears. I got my big headphones on.
Number 1, education. Get yourself educated. Understand the form of government we have.
Right.
Number 2, now you have to learn how to use your civic authority to control your elected officials. Well, how do you do that? I don't know how to do that. Well, it's real easy. You go out and you meet your representatives. Okay. Right. You got to get off the lazy butt. You got to stop watching the video games. Go out there, go over to your city council, watch the city council meeting. After the city council meeting, introduce yourself to your council members. Introduce yourself to the mayor. Hey, my name is so-and-so. Hi, Mr. Mayor. My name is so-and-so. I'm one of your people that live here, and, I've got some concerns. Most of the time they have a call to action where you can actually go up there and you can address them. They give you time, a call to the public where you can take your concerns to your representatives.
Right.
Create relationships. Look, I know my representatives here in the state. I know them. I have their phone numbers in my phone. I have their email addresses. I call them. I meet with them. I go over to the meetings. I know the mayor. I know the council. I know the sheriff of the county.
And more importantly, they know you.
That's exactly right.
They know your
Now,
position.
Here's the thing. We're coming up on an election season. And remember, you hear me saying, pick your ponies. Pick your pony wisely. Go out and meet that pony. Go out and meet that representative. Study, find the ones that are matching your viewpoints, and go out, shake their hands, work to knock on doors. I'm about ready to go out here pretty shortly and start collecting signatures for some people that I know that are going to run for, office here, and I'm going to support them. And I will go out and I will collect signatures. I will hand them those signatures. I will work with their campaign. Okay, you don't have any money.
So it's not like a big hard thing now. So you're talking local then, right?
No, because we're
not
talking
national garbage. It's just
well, no, I'm talking both, because we elect our state senators as well, and we elect our congressmen.
Don't get me started on that, but
okay, we elect them. I know. We ended up with the lesser of two evils in the last election, but that's because it's our fault, Mark.
Right.
Most people are sitting at home. They don't care. I'm giving you the solution on how to fix it without firing a shot. It takes energy. You go out, you meet these representatives, and you get them elected. But you make sure that they're individuals that are going to follow the Constitution. I don't care if they're Democrats. I don't care if they're Republicans. I don't care if they're independents. You're looking at individuals that are going to adhere to the confines of the Constitution without making up a bunch of crap. You work to get them elected. Okay, now you have a friendship with them. Now when you call them, they will listen to you.
Right.
Okay, so now you have their phone numbers and all that because you helped to work them get elected, and they know who you are, and they know that you're on their side, and they know that you're a friend, and you start saying, hey, look, now I want to write a bill. Will you run that bill on the floor in the Arizona Senate? Will you be willing on the House? Would you be willing to do that? Yeah, let's talk about the bill. So whatever the bill is that you as a citizen want, for instance, let's say if, for instance, you want to run a bill that says if your city in this state is going to support sanctuary cities, we are going to restrict you and not allow you to get funding from state funds.
Right.
Okay. And you take that to your representative and you say, okay, look, I want to run this bill. Will you sponsor it? Absolutely. I'll sponsor it for you. Now you get it put on the floor. Okay, now you have somebody that's willing to sponsor your bills and help you get them passed. Once you get them passed, they go through the House, they go through the Senate. Now they go to the governor to sign. Guess what? The governor just signed a bill that you wrote that says if you want to support sanctuary cities, you no longer get state funding.
Right.
Okay, now you see what I'm saying? You're controlling the system.
Right. To a point. Yeah.
To a point.
Because you still got all the other, 100 congressmen in the state,
but that's one state. Now you have to create relationships with like-minded individuals in other congressional districts that are willing to do the same thing in their congressional districts.
Okay, wait a minute now. I'm going to go back to devil's advocate. Not that he needs an advocate.
Okay.
So as you're saying that, because I understand what you're saying and how it works, my eyes are glazing over. Blood is shooting. Because, I have enough time in my life to get to know my local guys. And I have no problem helping the local mayor and a couple county people, because I can do that at work, after work, a couple hours a day. So wouldn't we need to then get some people together that work with other like-minded people in the next county over?
That's exactly right.
And then start building little links to where you're not trying to herd cats. You're just saying, I know another guy that thinks just like you in the next county over. Work with him, and then that way you're not spending all your time in the next county over.
That's exactly right, Mark. You got the nail on the head.
Okay. And it looks like we're going to have to take another break and then continue on with this crash course in civic duties.
Hi, this is John Jeffers, inviting you to listen to my show, The Jeffers Brief. You know, on The Jeffers Brief, we discuss topics of interest and concerns for preppers and patriots. And you can only find us on the Contra Radio Network on podbean.com or KYAH 540 AM, Utah's Talk Authority. Hope you join me, and we'll talk to you then.
And welcome back to the third section of the show today. And we have been talking about, oh man, if we opened up a can of worms, we're chasing that rabbit down the hole. So we've been talking about how to do it without firing a shot. And the first step, like I said, is get yourself educated. And like I said, you don't need a law degree or anything like that. Just understand that we live in a republic and not a democracy. And then number two, go out there, find your candidates that are going to adhere to the confines and the principles of the Constitution. Work to get them elected.
Yeah.
Work hard. Go out, volunteer, make phone calls. You can go over to your local committee office and they have phone banks, and you can volunteer to make phone calls. You can go knocking on people's doors. You can hand out flyers. You can put, when we get closer to the elections, you can help your candidates by putting up signs. There's always something that the candidate needs help doing. Help your candidate to get elected, and then create that relationship with that candidate so that you have a friend that is willing to listen to what you say.
Right. And I don't want people to start thinking this is like you're creating a good old boys club. But you have to have a good relationship, a working relationship with the people that we have elected.
Exactly.
So it's not like you're playing golf with the guy and trying to cheat the city out of money.
No.
You're just trying to have an exchange to where you can shake hands with the guy if you meet him at a restaurant and say, how's it going? Where are we at on this?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about, going out and spending a bunch of money and buying dinners and all this and bribing and all. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, a good relationship where you can have a communication, and it's an open door where that individual is willing to listen to what you have to say.
Right.
And they'll either agree with you or they won't agree with you.
Well, and if you're finding people that are like-minded, maybe the nuts and bolts of it might be a little up for discussion. But the underlying goal will always be the same,
Right.
So that's good. So
and
then what do we?
And then before you know it, after a while, you have started creating, other relationships with like-minded individuals, because everybody knows two or three friends.
Right.
Oh, I got a friend in Wisconsin. We got a friend in Michigan.
Right.
Let's talk to him. Let's get on the phone. Let's have a Skype and let's talk to him and let's say, okay, look, you need to find. Or, even if you think that individual is going to be a good candidate, convince them to run.
Right.
And say, okay, look, find yourself 5 or 6 guys. Get this guy elected, man. Get him elected. Work hard to get him elected. And before you know it, you start that somebody over there in that group knows somebody over in, Colorado.
Right.
And somebody in that group. And before you know it, you have a whole grassroots movement that is working to bring back and save the republic. Right. And I'm telling you, man, it works. I know it works because I have put it into play myself personally.
Right. What I like about it, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I think, as far as being close to home, you're going to be helping people that are considered or called your representative, which is your congressman.
Right.
And if you look at the bath we took during this last election in the House, as far as Congress goes, you can see that their ground game is a lot better than ours. Mm-hmm. And we lost a lot of seats. Now everybody's like, yeah, but we kept the Senate. The Senate is really kind of irrelevant to me. And to get involved with the Senate race is millions of dollars. And you're trying to, call Hollywood elites, basically.
Right.
But if we could get total control of the House of Representatives, which are the guy that you live next door to, then we can get control of Congress again also. And then, they can fight their big fights in the Senate. But apparently the Democrats understand that the people that write the check and make the rules are really Congress. The senators are, they're powerful now only because we've allowed them to. But if we made enough changes to to set things on a better course, you're going to want good congressmen. And that's the representative in your district, Bob, down the street that you went to school with.
Yep.
Help him get elected.
I'm working right now with, I'm not going to say any names right now because the individual hasn't really announced, but I already have somebody, you know, that I've committed to working with in that department. And, you know, these are the people that, and I mean, he's a solid candidate, solid guy. And these are the people I'm going to work my hardest to get him elected.
Now, let me ask you, because you and I, and probably most of our listeners and the people that like CRN and patriots and preppers are going to be on the same page as us. How do we start getting the mindless sheeple, not just Democrats, but the people that, you know, like, you know, all my kids are Generation X. They're pretty rebellious and they believe in obey little and resist much, you know.
Nothing wrong
and
with
yet,
that.
when you talk to them about these issues, they're like, it doesn't matter. You know, who cares?
Yeah.
And they got this, I mean, they're young, you know, older than AOC, but they're young, you know, in their 30s and 40s. And they don't see that it's important.
Sure.
And by the time they do, it's kind of too late.
I agree.
So how do we wake up, you know, our neighbors, not just, you know, liberals, because I don't care about liberals and Democrats. How do we wake people up and just go, when you're talking to them about it, in a way to where they go, oh, I see, that could be handy, you know. How do you do that?
Well, you got to get their attention. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I mean, if it takes sounding the alarm every time you see or speak to them,
right,
that's what it's going to take. But you know, you have to. Hey, do you like hot water? Because you know they're playing that game about Republicans want dirty water and dirty air and all this other garbage.
Yeah.
And you know, that doesn't work, and that nobody listens to that crap. You have to be at it with a sincerity.
Right.
And you have to point out to them how important this is.
I think that's the nail on the head right there. Is, you know, it's the same with any kind of business you're in, and especially in media or video. You have to be seriously compassionate about it and believe in it.
Yeah.
And not be overbearing, or don't be a jackass. But you know, you got to feel it.
Yep. You do. You got to believe it in yourself. First of all, you have to believe. And when you believe, look, man, I had a very wise individual one time tell me that you have to bleed what it is you want people to see from you.
Right.
And if you can get yourself in a situation, the power of influence is amazing.
Right.
And if you can put yourself into a situation where you bleed wealth, then people are going to look at you as a wealthy individual, and they're going to respect the wealth. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
If you bleed that there is a true concern that we one day may very well wind up in a boxcar in a railroad somewhere, you know, people are going to see that, and they may take it at face value and say, oh, he's just a nutbag, or he's just a lunatic, or whatever. But
fearmonger.
Balance. But you have to have a healthy balance, because you can't just go overboard all the time. You have to have a healthy balance. And when you become the expert, okay? Because when you become the expert, people look up to you and say, this guy knows what he's talking about. Listen to what he's saying.
Right. Yeah, you know, that's the old business adage, you know, if you believe you can achieve, and, you know, even dress for success and all those old cliches now are true, because, you know, as you think is what you become and who you are. And maybe you are that person, and that's why you think that way. I don't know if the egg or the chicken came first, but, you know, it really is. You know, you have to have your principles, and I rail on that all the time. You know, and I'm making a new podcast for Prepper Guy that's just on values and stuff like that, because If you don't have any, then you can't believe in anything.
See, Mark, when people come into your store looking for floors, they come to you because you're the expert. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know the materials that you sell. You know what's good. You know.
Yeah.
Me, when I was cleaning, when I had my carpet cleaning business, I went out and I learned the ins and outs about, what polyester and vinyl and all these different, man-made. And back in the old days, we used to shampoo carpets. It was all natural fibers, wools, and you flood it, you soap it up, and then you suck it out. But you can't do that. You can't hot water extract with the man-made fabrics that we have because you'll destroy it. I mean, with the natural fabrics, you'll destroy it. So we use hot water extraction on polyester and all these different fabrics, nylon and all this other stuff that we have. And you have to learn what soaps to use, how much to put down, how much heat to use, how much suction. And when you go into Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house and say, that's so-and-so, and I know how to get that out, and you go in there and you pull that stain out of there, and they're like, wow, they're amazed. They're like, hey, when they go to the party at next door or something, and something's, Don Lowry, he's got a really good carpet cleaning, and he knows what he's doing.
Right.
And the word of mouth, and you become the expert, and people will start listening to you.
Right. And it does become kind of simplistic, but when you become an expert, people understand that and they know it. I've had people go, well, I've got a Dyson vacuum cleaner, and I go, with this kind of carpet, you'll avoid your warranty.
Yeah.
It's a good vacuum, but the beater bar is too aggressive and it'll ruin it. And people go, well, I didn't know that. But I guess because when you're talking about carpet or stuff like that, it's easier for them to say, well, I didn't know that. But when you tell them about why we're a republic, they're like, it falls back to the, yeah, but.
I don't care.
Scenario. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that might be true, but I think people need a little training to own a gun. Well, no, but, so they, what you want and need are different. And, somebody before they can own a gun should have enough brains, and the person selling them the gun might help get them into some training. But it's not mandatory, and it is not part of your constitutional rights. You can buy a gun. Right. You can own it. You can trade it. You can make your own. It goes down all those paths.
Yes.
And people have a hard time going, oh, I didn't know that. Everyone's got to have their damn opinion, and it always starts with, yeah, but.
Exactly. No, I agree. But you just, like I said, that's why I said you have to educate yourself, because you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be able to explain to people.
Well, and it wasn't really that damn complicated 200 years ago, because, when Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense, it's really what it was, common sense. If your yard has weeds, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, oh, I need to get rid of the weeds. But they want to complicate it, and that's the Federalist Papers, as great as they are, try reading that. God, I'd rather gargle with dirt.
Yeah, I know.
But yet, but that was more of the debate before the ratification. It's like, the back and forth of what this word should be and what it would mean and how it would apply. But when you look at the Constitution as ratified, you have these rights, and the federal government has very little authority. And so when they start trying to tell me, well, but 50 years ago we had this act passed, which is not law, it's just an act. And so it changed everything. It's like, no, it really didn't. It's just now it's more of an uphill battle to get the judge to understand it. This is what you have the right to do, and so it makes it complicated. So is there another step before we take a break? We can, we got another minute, and then.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and cut to break, and then when we come back, let's start wrapping it up. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about, I'd like to talk about some of how, because you're talking about back in time, the ridiculousness of how we raped and pillaged and plundered the United States from Mexico. And
oh, yeah, that's
I think we can finish up there.
That might kind of be a good segue into what we're talking about.
Exactly.
All righty.
We'll take a break and we'll come back right after this.
All right.
Contra Radio Network, Preparedness Radio, featuring John Jeffers, The Mark Boyle Show, The Conservative Underground, and much more. ContraRadioNetwork.com. Log on now.
Alrighty, and welcome back to the final installment of this episode of the Two Crazy Guys. Remember to go over to ContraRadioNetwork.com and check out the other shows that are over there. My other show, The Conservative Underground, is on there. Mark Boyle's Prepper Guy is on there. We've got John Jeffers and the Jeffers Brief. Prepping 2.0 is there, and there's some others. And so go over there. And by the way, do us a big favor and go over there and show some support for Contra Radio Network. See if you can just donate a couple bucks, man. I mean, it's not going to kill you to donate a couple bucks for the network, man.
Yeah, it really does help John and everybody out, and it's mostly for John. He's flipping the bill for all this, and as you can tell by our studio setups, that we're not funded by NPR or CBS, and so John does it, and he's trying really hard to put something good together, and I also put in a lot of my things. If you can't afford to support the show even for a few dollars a month, share the heck out of the content that's on there that you like. Because somebody else might see that and go, well, I can help. So
exactly.
Get out there and share it.
So we have been talking about education, getting educated, and Mark brought up an interesting subject about Americans raping and pillaging and plundering the country.
Yeah.
Take it away, Mr.
Oh,
Mark.
yeah. Well, I don't know why it is, but some things I have a pet peeve with, and people going, well, you stole the land from the Indians, you stole the land from Mexico. And so I started looking at some maps, and I'm going to put them on the video because I'm afraid if I do a screen share, I'll screw this all up.
Hey, so do yourselves a favor if you want to see the video part of this. If you're listening to this on KYAH or one of the podcasts, go over to www.twocrazyguys.com. That's the number 2 with the letter K, and you'll be able to watch the video version of this and see the map that Mark's put on the screen right now. Yeah,
because I'll be putting some on there, and I'll leave them off. But this is more for radio, so I guess a picture is not worth 1,000 words. But so I started looking at it, and originally, the original territory we acquired, from the 13 colonies and all that after the Revolutionary War was the Treaty of Versailles or the Treaty of 1783. Mm-hmm. Whereas the land through treaty was given to us by England, or because we won, right? And France was there, and Spain was there, and England, the king, and us, and so they gave us that land after we pretty much stomped them into the ground after the Revolutionary War. But my point is, it's like that land had already been colonized by England hundreds of years ago, right? So the Indians were not an issue to England when they placed their flag. They just said, this is ours, look at this. And so when we were given or granted the land through treaty, we were granted it by England, who had taken it from the American Indians, I guess, if you want to worry about the indigenous people. So now, so if I buy your house, I can throw you out of it. Take it up with the guy that owned the house that you were living in. Mm-hmm. And then the next, I guess the next big acquisition was the Louisiana Purchase, which kind of has it all in the name, Louisiana Purchase. And I think, I can't remember, that was in 1803, and it was also witnessed by France. We bought it from France. I think it was actually purchased from Napoleon.
Napoleon Bonaparte. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Jefferson, who didn't really put the deal together, but he thought they were just buying Louisiana, and the seaport and everything. And it turned out to be a massive part of, had doubled the size of the United States. So we bought that from France, and France really didn't care about the indigenous people back then either, because they had owned that part of Louisiana, what they called Louisiana, for hundreds of years before we showed up and bought it from them. And I think we ended up paying $15 million for that. And then, it's just, when you talk about education and trying to figure out, this is how they stupefy us, I guess, with this, we took the land. And then you hear that enough times and you start thinking, well, yeah, the colonists were a bunch of jerkweeds. It's like,
exactly right.
No, we actually bought the land and did everything right.
Yes.
And we bought it from people who had taken the land hundreds of years before we ever even showed up here. And we purchased it from the rightful owner. So, right. I mean, if the American Indian has a complaint, take it up with France or England. Any retribution that should be paid or reparations, send the bill to England or France or Spain. So then the next thing we bought was, part of Florida, the bottom part of Florida.
Right.
And I think we paid $5 million for this. Now, this is back in 1819. Yeah. So $5 million, we're talking billion-dollar prices here, for it. And then I think we had to buy another little chunk of that. And then there was the Texas, acquisition, and that we, kind of got from Mexico or Spain after we went to war with them. And people think, well, yeah, okay, we bought Texas. No, the Texas purchase was, it encompassed half of New Mexico, parts of, Utah and everywhere. So it was a huge tract of land that went almost, halfway up the continent toward Canada. And once again, I think that was, we got that through annexation, because we had, I guess, won a war or something.
Right.
And then, and all the maps I'll put on the video overlay so you can actually read what happened about it. And then we went out and we got the Oregon purchase, which was not just Oregon. It was Oregon and, parts of Idaho and stuff. It went all the way down to Nevada. So we got that through a treaty and a secession thing where I guess Canada decided, or England decided, you can have it. Let's just draw the line right here. So I'm studying all these maps, thinking, where did our imperialist title come from? Because we were just living here, and then when we decided we want a chunk of land, we negotiated a deal. Just like if anybody wants to buy a new car or a used car, you negotiate a deal. Their grandkids can't sit there and say, you stole my dad's Mustang. It's like, no, me and him talked about this and bought it. If you have a problem, take it up with your great-grandfather or whoever screwed the deal up. And then there was the Mexico secession. Boy, those words kill me. And then the Gadsden Purchase, which finalized the entire continental United States. Now, we got that Mexico cessions by, we went to war with Mexico.
Yes. And
we literally had occupied Mexico City. So in my way of thinking, that's an unconditional surrender. We could have kept Mexico. Mm-hmm. It was the spoils of war. But to be good neighbors, we decided, look, we're going to draw the line here, and that was the Treaty of Guadalupe.
Yep.
And it was actually, I read the thing last night, the entire treaty, which is kind of weird, but and we agreed to leave, and we pulled all our troops out of Mexico City and all the ports and everywhere we were. And then any of the Mexicans that had lived on the United States side or the new United States side were given the option to stay and keep their property and everything, or to leave. They were given a year to make their decision. And if they never made a decision, then they basically had dual citizenship, but they didn't lose their land or nothing. If they were big, Mexican ranchers, they owned that. Mm-hmm. And it was left to them. And so I'm looking at these maps thinking, we just negotiated good deals. But all that land, all of it was owned by Spain, which had nothing to do with Mexico because Spain is not Mexico.
Right.
I mean, the Spanish people, hung out with the Indians and they bred, and that became Mexicans. So if you're pissed about anything, take it up with Spain, take it up with France, take it up with Canada, take it up with England. Because we just moved in and bought it all, kind of like buying Boardwalk,
Yeah.
And so it kind of goes to what we're talking about as far as, education, because they use that in this border issue,
Yes.
and
you took it from us and all this other stuff. Yeah.
It's like, no, your crappy president sold it to us. And if you have a problem with it, maybe you should elect better presidents.
Exactly.
Because you get the government you elect, so. And so it was just something I kind of wanted to vent on a little bit because I knew you would have some opinions on it too. So,
well, I mean, I always have an opinion on something,
but that's why I like you, Don.
No, it's exactly right, man. It is to listen to these left-wing loonbat lunatics out there. It just blows my mind how they can say, well, we're these evil white people that came in and were racist and we're homophobes and we're bigots and all this other stuff. And, all it is talking points because when you ask them, well, what crime did Trump commit? They don't have an answer.
No.
So when they start with this whole crap about how we invaded Mexico and, well, we took the land. Well, no, you just went through the whole thing. We purchased the land. We bought it from them.
And we went to war with them because Santa Anna and all the troops decided to, kill everybody at the Alamo. And, there was contention there. But the reality was, it's like, you started this war. We just happened to end it.
We didn't invade them. We just won it.
Right.
And then we bought the land. We rightfully are the owners of the land. It is our land that we rightfully own. And to sit there and call me an invader, that I invaded your land or whatever, you need to educate yourself and understand that I didn't invade anything. Right. I am on my rightful land that I rightfully own because my founding fathers, or my forefathers, I should say, not the founders, the forefathers, were smart enough to do the right thing.
They actually did the right thing. If you read the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, I mean, both sides were very cordial and expressed a desire to be good neighbors. Now, I don't know if there's a treaty or a document for surrender because we did win.
We could. I mean, if we really wanted to be buttheads about it,
right, we
could do like Kim Jong-un and just put a bunch of mobile missile launchers on the border and just start lobbing missiles down in there.
Right.
Stay the hell away from our border.
Right. Or we could
stay the hell away.
Or we could say they're in violation of their treaty of surrender.
Yeah, but we don't
just go and take it all back. Go, okay, you voided the contract, so now all of Mexico is now the United States. You all want to come here, so now you're here by virtue of just your zip code.
That's exactly right.
You don't even have to pack up and walk. You are now Americans, which I don't think 90% of the people in Mexico would have a problem with that at all. Mm-hmm. Don, I cannot believe it, but it's already time to start wrapping things up.
So, I guess we'll get ready to start wrapping it up. Mark, you've got some valuable insights, man, some good points. I really enjoy doing these with you because it comes from the heart, and we're able to talk freely about the things that we enjoy to talk about. And we hope that you enjoy, and we hope that you continue to listen. Like I said, you can always go over to ContraRadioNetwork.com and support them. Heck, call up, KYAH if that's where you're hearing this, and let them know that you're enjoying the programming, because that helps. That helps us a lot.
It does. It really does.
Thanks for tuning in. Catch them next time as they dig into the issues. The Two Crazy Guys. Log on to the website at www.ContraRadioNetwork.com.